Welcome to the Mobile Armored Podcast Show, the podcast that transforms into an Indiana Jones scale desecration of ruins. My name is Adam Moore, alongside my co-host and best friend, PJ McNerney, who came up with that transformation line.
That's my one contribution to this episode at this point in time. So I want to call out that, Adam does an amazing job of coming up with all these transformations each and every time. And so this is my one bone that I'm throwing in to help out. You asked how I'm doing. I'm very angry. This particular episode incenses me to no end. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our panda poop conversation at the end of the episode. You're angry. I'm frustrated with it on a lot of levels. But here we are. So it's episode 33, Caesar's Sword. Venom agent Sly Rax poses as the ghost of Julius Caesar to scare off a team of archaeologists who have uncovered Caesar's Sword of Victory. Now, you and I took 4 years of Latin in high school.
We did.
I don't remember Caesar's Sword of Victory being written about in the Gallic Wars or anything like that.
Yeah, De Bello Gallico doesn't mention it. Believe it or not, there is a sword, but we're gonna talk a lot about this. And I'm very upset at our favorite history teacher in the show, not in real life. I mean, right. In the show. This is also a lie. Like, these archaeologists, if they're archaeologists at all, have not in fact discovered shit. Okay.
Shit.
So this tagline is just like, it's a lie, like right off the bat.
Well, yeah, there is more like a professor in construction workers, it seems. All right. So we open on Thunderhawk going wildly over the speed limit in Rome with Bruce, Scott, and T-Bob in the car there. And notably, Scott and T-Bob are not wearing seatbelts.
I just like this idea of Matt. Seatbelts are garbage. You're in a foreign country. Don't worry, no one's going to enforce it.
What are you, a wimp? Shut up, kid. So, I did note, I went back and I noted that Matt is in fact wearing a seatbelt.
He is. So, he is.
He protects himself. Parents in the 70s and the 80s. Seatbelts, what are you talking about? You're in the back seat. You're going to be fine.
To be fair, Matt knows that at any point in time, his gull wing doors might open and he'll try to do a barrel roll. So, I actually think Matt needs a seatbelt on at all times.
Yeah, true.
Lest he just fall out.
Yeah, but you're in the back seat. You can also fall right out those gull wing doors too. So, I'm going to nominate this for a Father of the Year moment right off the bat.
Yes. That implies he's caring.
So they drive past the Coliseum, and T-Bob says they're going to have to fix it up if they ever expect to have a major league franchise.
I loved how T-Bob has succumbed to the Trakker tendency to think about money. How do we commercialize this thing? This ruined building. It's useless just being a priceless artifact.
Meanwhile, up on the Palantine Hill, some stereotypical Italian construction workers are using a crane to lift ancient ruins. So I have many things I would like to pause on here.
Yeah.
First, we have a Buddy Hawks nomination for the very Mario Luigi accents we're hearing here. Hey, lift it up, but be careful.
It's pretty egregious. And, we've seen this problem before many, many times, but it's on full display here.
And then secondly, they're using a construction crane, which might not be the best tool for moving delicate ruins.
I loved it. I was like, you know what? Fuck it.
But here's the third thing is I'm pretty sure the Palantine Hill has been thoroughly excavated. What more could they possibly find?
I don't know if they're trying to find anything, and I'm going to reserve the right to recall this moment later on the episode because I think it ties to what are Matt's interests in this area.
Okay, noted. Well, suddenly, some smoke comes out of a hole in the ground, and the ghost of Julius Caesar, who sounds a lot like Sly Rax, appears. And he says, "Plebeians, the Palatine Hill is my resting place." Trying to do an Italian accent. Do you think Julius Caesar had... I don't know. We don't know what they sounded like.
He wouldn't be speaking English.
Well, there's that too.
He would be speaking in ancient Latin. Probably the closest that we have in the modern day would be the Romanian people. But I do not think he would be like emphasizing his words in the Mario and Luigi style Italian American accent we hear here.
So certainly a Buddy Hawks nomination for Slyrax here.
100% on this one. He also declares, when they ask him, who are you? He's like, the most powerful military general of the ages, a Julius Caesar. And I was like, okay, Julius was really impressive. I don't want to take anything away. A few other folks might take issue with this, like Alexander the Great, Hannibal Barca. And then I cheated on this one. I said Genghis Khan and his kid Subutai, but that came much later on. So
agreed. A bit of hyperbole. I mean, he might be the most powerful military general of the ages if he has the power that's displayed next, which is that he fires a laser from his finger and breaks the winch on the crane. And he says, if you refuse to obey me, you will suffer my wrath.
Which destroys the ruin. They had this big pillar that they were picking up, and it totally cracks on the ground. It was like, all right, wanton destruction. Thanks a lot, asshole.
Yeah, well, also, he says this is his resting place. So it's like you're desecrating your own resting place.
This is what you get if you desecrate my resting place. But you just did it. Shut up.
Well, we cut to Matt and Bruce, and they are investigating the aftermath with a professor who gets a solid Buddy Hawks nomination for his Italian accent as well.
I want to point out, we're about 3 minutes in. We've got like 4 to 5 solid Buddy Hawks right off the bat.
I know. In recent episodes, we've kind of ducked it a little bit here and there. And here we are in Italy where they don't necessarily have to lean into it all that much. And yet, like, left and right, we're getting Buddy Hawks nominations. It's crazy.
They were saving it up.
They were. They were. Well, Scott is there, of course, and he discovers a gold coin on the ground. And he reads some Latin, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. What did you get?
So I had to listen to this a few times. It's weird because what he said is "e luesa et quara," and the best I could come up with was it means from the rain and snow. I've never heard this on any Roman coin. It's possible they mispronounced it, or the Latin was just janky. They just put some shit down, and it happens to match up with this.
Well, unfortunately, this coin turns out to be bronze, and Scott is like super bummed out. Like, it's just bronze. It's like, dude, it's an ancient coin you just found. How cool is that? It's worthless.
Well, the professor shits on it immediately because it's like, oh yeah, they find him all over the place here. It's like, whatever.
Well, but can we talk about the fact that Matt is almost certainly funding this archaeological dig? Because that's his MO. So what is he trying to do here?
Well, I mean, yeah, he gets carte blanche access, so I kind of have to figure that he is funding it. I think they're putting up a new mall, honestly. And so I think the reason they're moving the ruins is to develop the space commercially. Because why would you move a giant pillar like that? Like, you know, it's like, hey, you need to study it and do all sorts of things rather than risk its destruction. So maybe it's a theme park. I don't know, but it's like, you know.
I think you're right. I think it's an outlet mall. I think it's Palantine Hill's outlet that they're putting up. Come to Palantine Hill, a Trakker real estate property. Well, Matt and Bruce, they use the M.A.S.K computer to analyze the hook from the crane. And the computer says evidence of particle beam laser under development by V.E.N.O.M. And I just kind of got a little confused here because don't they already have particle beams? Could I get a science corner here to help me out?
Yeah, let's kind of suss this out a bit. It is a bizarre combination. Let's start with what is a particle beam, okay? Now, a particle beam is something that accelerates a particle, which could be like atomic or subatomic, to high speeds to smash into something. So, you know, you could think of like any particle accelerator that's, you know, like CERN or something like that is a particle beam. So you're whipping around like ions or atoms or even like electrons, and you're firing them in a given direction. And you're like, they're getting accelerated to near light speed. So when they hit something, it's a lot of energy you're dispersing. The military have been trying to play with this for a while, and if they've got it, it's under wraps. It's probably on those New Jersey drones. But what is a laser then? So again, lasers, light amplification through stimulated emission of radiation, all right? So you're taking these coherent photons, which means they're all the same wavelength, and you're just firing them in a given direction. So if you want to get really pedantic about it, lasers, light acts as both particle and waves. So you can consider a laser to be kind of a type of a particle beam. So calling something a particle beam laser is kind of redundant. Here's the thing. If it's just a laser, so be it. They've come up with something, and it's just like, whatever. If it is a particle beam, however, Sly is getting exposed to amazingly dangerous levels of EM radiation. So I hope he has put his sperm in a bank ahead of time, because that is no bueno. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, Sly. Just adding insult to injury in terms of the radiation contamination of all these people. But what's interesting, too, is like the particle beam doesn't necessarily even like pay off later in the episode. It's just that's their connection to Venom. And it's real threadbare. But it gives Matt the authorization he needs to go to war in a foreign country. And so in comes the agent selection scene. First up is Gloria Baker, black belt in Kung Fu, champion race driver, team hottie, and Matt's wife, and apparently a background in archaeology, according to the computer. Is she Lara Croft?
Maybe. I mean, I guess maybe Lara Croft was based on Gloria.
Maybe. Well, she gets the call. She's in the dojo, and she drops a female opponent onto the ground without mercy and then runs off.
So I do want to point out, the scene involves her first dropping the female opponent to the ground prior to the alarm going off. So she did that basically just out of course. And then when the emergency happened, she basically looks like she trips the opponent again. And then she takes off. So it's a real fuck you moment at that point in time.
Absolutely. Second on the team is Hondo McClane. And the computer says he's a high school history teacher with expertise in ancient Rome. We'll see how that goes. So he's walking up the stairs in school, and he's giving these two kids like some serious side eye. It's very bizarre. But then he gets the call and he comes sliding down the banister and he runs away.
The expression from these kids is amazing. They're so blown away by this move. I thought they were in a Skittles commercial, because it's that level of like, whoa,
taste the rainbow. Well, I'm starting to think that maybe Hondo suspected these kids of being totally stoned. Like, as he's walking up the stairs and he's looking at them, he's like sniffing. He's like, wait a minute, what's this that I smell? Because they are so stunned by him sliding down the banister and running away. They're like, whoa.
You cracked it, man. This is Spicoli all the way.
100%. Well, the third member of our team is Bruce Sato, pre-selected. And I said, phew. Like, thank goodness, because that would have been another awkward conversation.
Do you feel like Bruce would have been a little hurt the computer didn't describe his use like he did the others, other than you happen to be there? Well, look, that's it.
In the past, as we know, the computer has not selected the person who was already present. So at least he got that.
Good
call.
So
let's do a check on the flight time.
So for Gloria and Hondo to get to Denver, it's about 10.5 hours direct. So they'll have some time to kill in Rome.
Indeed. Well, meanwhile, we catch up with Venom, and they are shacked up in some underground tunnels/ruins beneath Rome. Rax scares Cliff with his Caesar's ghost costume, and he says, "You really are dumb." To which Cliff responds, "Don't call me dumb." And Rax says, "Sorry, numbskull." And Cliff says, "That's better."
I really feel like we're getting to the point. Like, if we didn't have so many awards already, I'd want to keep track of how much shit Cliff takes. It's a lot all the time.
It is. It's a lot by the characters, and it's a lot by the writers as well, dumping on him.
Yeah. Did you notice Sly's not wearing glasses? Like, he looks alert. He's off of the ganja. He's getting back to his New Year's resolution.
So Rax, by the way, he's really proud of himself and this new laser that he has. But Vanessa says, stop taking all the credit, because his ghost act wouldn't have succeeded without her smoke bombs. And then she throws one of them at Rax, and the breeze emitted causes his toga to lift up, exposing very feminine undergarments. What the heck is going on here? Like, it's not even really appropriate for kids.
Yeah. What we get treated to are several seconds of a close-up of Sly's crotch. there's no two ways about it. Like, they make sure they zoom in right away and then continue it on afterwards.
I know, it's bizarre.
And I'd like to point out this. So there is no visible smoke here. This is not a smoke bomb. This is a Marilyn Monroe subway air vent bomb, because that is the effect it has caused.
That's exactly what it does. And it has no purpose here. The previous time it was in the show, he was being chased, was it by the pandas? And his pants got ripped and it showed like his little boxer shorts with hearts on them. I think I'm remembering correctly. And this episode definitely gives the panda one a run for its money. So maybe it's the same writer, and the writer just loves showing Sly Rax's underwear. And I think that's an issue that writer needs to deal with a therapist.
Well, they've upgraded it, because the last time we got like a brief shot, lasting maybe a couple seconds, of Sly's heart underwear. This one, we get a zoom in and then we continue it like at a wide shot of making sure this is his underwear.
But not to belabor this point, but do they not know how to animate underwear? Or maybe Sly just wears really, really blousy boxer shorts, because they're waving in the wind like it's a skirt.
I'll back the animators on this one, because like they get the script and they're going to call up and say, wait, you want us to animate this guy's underwear? Like, we don't know how to do that, because that's not what you do in a children's show. No.
Right.
You have to animate the underwear. Are you sure? You do it or you're fucking fired. Like, I feel like that's so I'll buy the fact this is badly animated, because this is not something you typically do in a kid show.
Inappropriate across the board. Well, Miles, it turns out, has a plan for Venom to become invincible. He says, and all I have to do is follow this map. I just want to pause here and say, like, okay, Miles, have any of your other quote unquote maps that lead to Venom's invincibility ever paid off? They haven't gone very well so far.
So invincibility, no. They nearly did find that. I mean, they did technically find the Nazi gold a few episodes ago. They didn't get to keep it, and it never made them invincible. They tend to find the stuff and just lose it. But prosecution reserves the right to return to this moment, to the sadness of Miles Mayhem this episode, okay? Because You're right, there is a problem that we're going to encounter here with regards to Miles's plan.
Well, meanwhile, Scott and T-Bob, basically orphaned as usual. They're eating at a cafe. Scott gets spaghetti and meatballs and a large pizza. This kid's starving. No one is feeding him. Boy. And then the waitress says, and for you, T-Bobino, my extra special olive oil, which he then uses to lubricate his arm, which I find to be gross. Just a couple things here. One, why does this waitress know Scott and T-Bob so well? And then also, two, a Father of the Year moment, because where the heck is Matt?
I think the answer to both questions we know is Matt's left Scott and T-Bob here very often. I'll say that we don't have quite enough evidence to say that Matt's had a dalliance with the waitress, but at the very least, like, Scott and T-Bob come here a lot, very lonely, and this waitress sees that.
Well, good. I'm at least there's someone who's feeling Scott's pain here. Scott tells T-Bob that he wants to go to the Palantine Hill, but T-Bob reminds him that Matt made him promise not to go looking for bronze coins, and so that allows Scott to find a loophole, because he's looking for gold coins, and he wants to run off, and T-Bob's like, what about the food? So cool that T-Bob doesn't want to waste food. But Scott's answer to that is to dump all the food into like a trash receptacle inside of T-Bob, which is also very gross.
The last time we've seen that, wasn't there like some kind of animal that was like being kept warm inside of T-Bob?
Yeah, it was a baby something that was being kept warm inside of T-Bob.
Let me ask you a question. Has
baby
Scott
panda
cleaned...
It might have been a panda baby.
It was a baby panda.
Yep.
It was a baby panda, you're right. Has Scott cleaned the receptacle since then?
No.
Okay. So to be clear, there's very old panda poo inside of T-Bob that now is in the same place where the food is.
Yum. Well, there's some cool stuff here, actually. Not so much the Scott being abandoned again. But Thunderhawk takes off into the air to intercept the masked jet, and we see it's being flown by Gloria and Hondo. So I kind of liked that moment.
I did too. I liked that. It was a very cool, like, all right, we're going to rendezvous in the sky. It's, implied, but it's like both Gloria and Hondo aren't just sort of badass drivers. They're also like capable pilots as well.
Yeah, let's add that to the list of things that Gloria can do.
Yes.
I mean, she's not Lara Croft. She's like James Bond. Like she can
She
do.
really is.
She should be the star of the show. But I digress. Matt asks them if they've ever heard of Caesar's sword. Now, Hondo, remember, picked for his knowledge of ancient Roman history, says, sure, when Caesar possessed the sword, Rome became a mighty empire. But when it was taken from him, he fell, and so did Rome.
We come to the heart of my anger for this episode. Hondo, I know the writers made you say that, so it's hard for me to blame you. I'm still very disappointed in you. This is like someone just decided, oh, let's just invent this history, even though like we're going to be actively harming kids by telling them a lie. Like
Right.
This is shit that would actually be on history tests. And I can imagine some poor third grader like saying, no, he had a magic sword.
You're right. This is not some obscure history or mythology from a part of the world that Western kids wouldn't know much about, right?
Right.
This is Roman history. This is the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
It's pretty well known.
Yeah. And we'll get into the details in a second. There's one way if you wanted to do this kind of episode, because actually G.I. Joe did it, but they actually did it the right way. All you have to do is change it from Caesar's sword to Excalibur. And then you get to kind of drive a bus through whatever mythology you want to at that point in time. But anyway, the writers have somehow combined the Ark of the Covenant from Raiders of the Lost Ark with Caesar's sword.
The Bible speaks of the Ark leveling mountains and laying waste to entire regions. An army which carries the Ark before it is invincible.
Let's get to the reality of it. Caesar did have a sword, and I didn't know this because it's not important, but it was called Crocia Mors, which stands for Yellow Death. And from everything I've been able to tell, because he fought in war, it wasn't just an armchair general. He got in the mix with it. So it was a gladius, which is a type of Roman sword. So, I mean, there's broadswords, there's katanas, there's claymores, gladius is a type of sword. And supposedly the sword actually was lost when he was fighting a Britannic prince, his name Nennius, when the sword got stuck in the guy's shield. Now, Nennius was a badass because he was mortally wounded by this, but he still survived for 15 days, took the sword and started killing Romans with it. But he was buried with the sword as a mark of honor. And to be sure, Julius, even after losing the sword, did pretty fine. He returned to Rome, became dictator, and he was fine until he was assassinated. And it's a little hard to suss out. He still was an amazing general after that. More importantly, and this is a point that I feel like gets lost all the time, Julius didn't really create the empire. He was at the tail end of the Republic. And if you really look at it, because it's an interesting period of history where there were these patriarchy, like the oligarchy that was there. And that was like kind of this like patrician state that was developing. And this kind of idea of a dictator was almost like a lesser evil. And there's some sort of thought that he might have been trying to reform Rome. He did not create the empire, but his grandnephew, Augustus, certainly fucking did.
Right.
And to be sure, the empire did not die with Julius. It lasted for almost 2,000 years until the last vestiges of the Holy Roman Empire died out. So this is an amount of bullshit that's incredible.
So just restating it, when Caesar possessed the sword, Rome became a mighty empire. When it was taken from him, he fell, and so did Rome. So
no, okay, no. He was assassinated by members of the Senate because they were afraid he was becoming too powerful.
Thank you for unpacking that and proving that it's all a bunch of hogwash. Bruce reveals that a map was stolen from a private collection, and they think that Venom stole it. And if they find the sword, Mayhem will, this is in quotes, Mayhem will feel he has become invincible. And that's what I heard. What did you hear? Because if this is all about stopping Miles because he will feel he's become invincible, I'm checking out right now.
I hate to confirm it for you, but yes, they're concerned with Miles's feelings right now. Okay. And I was like, doesn't he already feel like a megalomaniac? And again, I want to kind of sum this up as we go forward. We're afraid that an old man is going to feel invincible when he holds a sword. And that's why we're going to do what we're about to do.
I just love that. Miles is going to feel invincible. Form Mobile Armored Strike Command. We will not let this man feel out that way. Well, if this turns out to be authentic, Hondo reveals that there's a kid in his history class whose grade will have to be changed from an F to an A. So not only is history information completely wrong, but his grades are totally arbitrary.
So I played this one out in my head, and I love the idea that some kid has submitted a report around Caesar's sword after watching Raiders of the Lost Ark. And like Hondo, and he rightly thinks this is bullshit, so he gave him the right grade of an F.
Right.
But then Hondo's going to have to go back to that kid and be like, I got some new info.
Well, but how is he going to reveal this info to the kid? So I got some new info while I was off with my paramilitary organization. That's my side hustle. Well, oh boy. Meanwhile, Scott is digging and moving stones around, and he finds a potential tunnel. T-Bob tumbles down some column he's sitting atop, which causes all the stones that Scott has moved around to collapse. And surprise, surprise, Scott and T-Bob go falling to their doom.
Okay, a few things. I want to remind folks, we did a computation on T-Bob's weight, and we think it's somewhere on the order of 750 pounds.
Right.
So note that he just slammed into Scott. And were there no guards or tourist guides just to say you can't play on those ruins?
Well, there might have been, but he's Matt's kid. So they just step aside and let him in.
Good point.
I got to ask you, though, with Scott and T-Bob falling to their doom, what's going to happen?
I don't know.
We'll find out after these messages.
Hold on, there's a battle we have to tend to. Be right back. We got him. Now back to the show.
We're back. When we left you, Scott and T-Bob were, as usual, falling to their doom. But this time, I'm sorry to say, Scott hits the bottom. He's dead. And Matt will never be the same. Just kidding. Before they hit the ground, T-Bob grabs onto a root that's sticking out, and Scott grabs hold. Once on the ground, Scott discovers another bronze coin, and he's, again, super not thrilled about finding ancient artifacts.
So certainly a sly racks for this whole like sequence, basically, like, because he should be dead.
Yeah. Also, Scott is pretty nonchalant about almost dying.
That happens so often. It's so passe at this point in time, man.
Yeah. Well, T-Bob makes a joke about how some of his best friends are bronze. Any guesses as to what he's referring to?
I mean, I had no idea. I mean, other than I was like, because I looked up like, what are bronze robots? Because I thought maybe it would be like, oh, maybe from Metropolis or something like that. But no, turns out there's this thing called, it's an ancient myth, Talos, the mythical bronze robot of Crete, which was this magical robot that was gifted from Hephaestus to King Minos of Crete. And it had two jobs: to supervise the laws and apparently to fly over Crete 3 times a day to watch for invaders. And what's great is that if he saw ships, he would throw rocks at the ships. But if he saw invaders or enemies on the land itself, he would do this flame on thing where he would heat up his body and then grab the guy and just basically burn him against his chest. It's pretty insane.
Doesn't kill them. He just leaves them very badly burned.
Very badly burned. And so if this is, like, again, this is the only reference to a bronze robot I could think of, which I found to be a Roy Batty moment for Mr. T-Bob here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's definitely a tip of the hat to his future plan. Well, it turns out that Scott and T-Bob are in the catacombs under Rome. T-Bob starts leaving a trail of pepperoni behind them so they don't get lost. But of course, a cat with very strange coloring starts eating the pepperoni.
I never thought this plan was good. I don't see why he did, because catacombs contain rats. And returning to where you fell in isn't going to help you get back out.
Totally. They don't even really need that. I mean, it's a setup for something really dumb that happens near the end of the episode. Well, meanwhile, V.E.N.O.M is in the catacombs. They still haven't found the sword yet. So Miles decides to take Cliff and Vanessa with him while he orders Sly to go and check out another catacomb on his own. And Sly actually complains about this. And I'm just wondering, is Sly being punished for something?
I didn't know. It's weird because, like, Miles has this expectation of being able to find an ancient artifact in, like, days. And Sly is getting the brunt on this, and it's like, I don't know why.
Well, meanwhile, at the Trevi Fountain, we've got a couple of American tourists with a southern drawl enjoying the sights. And the guy says, I gotta say, those Italians had some talented plumbers. And I'm just going to go ahead and give another Buddy Hawks nomination, like all around here, for the Italian plumber stereotype bit, as well as for just the insulting Southern accents.
It's just littered with Buddy Hawks noms this entire episode. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen an episode so dense with it.
Just unnecessary ones, too.
100%.
They could have just been a normal American tourist. Just a normal American accent would have been fine. Well, the ground below the Trevi Fountain starts to shake and people are freaking out. And it turns out that Venom is firing lasers underground in the catacombs.
This is archaeology at its best.
Right.
And I'll say this much. Venom is living up to its terrorist brand in terms of wanton destruction.
Yeah.
It has no point other than just like, just destroying shit. But fine. Huh?
M.A.S.K picks up police reports. And so they head to the Trevi Fountain. And the American woman with the bad accent falls into the fountain and she's being sucked underwater as the water drains down into the catacombs. But Gloria, she arrives in Shark. She uses aura to stop the wall of water and she saves the woman's life. And again, she is just such a badass.
She is. I mean, Gloria and Hondo do so much of the heavy lifting so often.
Speaking of Hondo, he shows up and spots Venom driving in the catacombs. And so Bruce uses Lifter to pull Jackhammer out of the catacombs and onto the streets. So it's kind of a badass use of a M.A.S.K power for sure.
I really enjoy how Bruce just drops Jackhammer out of the sky. One other thing I noted from this scene, Switchblade is not in this episode.
Yeah, he's riding around in Jackhammer the whole time. So Hurricane fires its rear tire. And what is it with Hondo and vehicles that fire tires?
I would love it if that's like a thing he demands. Like, look, I'm not going to drive a vehicle unless I can fire its tire in some amazing way. That is like a red line for him, that any vehicle he drives, he needs that power.
Yes. Cliff raises the sort of front shield on Jackhammer. So the tire bounces off it. But Miles is sitting in the laser turret for some reason. Yeah. And he takes a direct hit in the face from this tire. Like, he should be very badly wounded by this, if not killed, right?
He should 100%. This is a Sly Rax nom for him. It would have broken his neck.
Right.
It rolls straight up.
He's dead. Well, we have a Thunderhawk Manta battle in the sky. Vanessa threatens to destroy the Forum if Matt doesn't call off his team. So Matt, rather than doing like anything awesome, like with his technology to stop Vanessa from doing that, he just tells the team to let them go, which is the least badass thing we've seen the whole episode. And it comes from the leader of M.A.S.K himself.
There's really not much that Matt does this episode, and this is actively harmful right here.
Yeah.
It was just like, now he cares about the ruins. Maybe those are ruins he cares about, and not the one he's putting the mall on top of. Because otherwise, I think it'd be like, great, raise it to the ground. Like, I can't wait to put up another outlet.
The Forum is the whole underpinning of my mall here. So it's got to be standing because people then walk up the stairs to the outlet mall.
Did you find it interesting that Venom actually has a radio frequency that can talk to M.A.S.K?
I feel like it's the first time we've seen this, though there might have been something kind of implied in a much earlier episode. But yes, I did notice that and thought it was a bit odd, actually. Why would they have the same radio frequencies?
I think it's like to have an open communication in case, like they need to like threaten or something like that.
Well, meanwhile, Sly Rax discovers Caesar's sword, and he actually gets a fantastic idea that if he keeps the sword, he can be as powerful as Caesar, and he won't have to be bossed around by Miles anymore. Super smart idea, Sly. And in fact, when Miles calls for progress report, Sly says, bug off.
He gets a backbone, and it made me think that maybe the sword does have a special power. Courage.
Yes, and there you go. The power of the sword all along was the people of Rome themselves.
Now, the sword is colored yellow, which does track. I mean, actually, it's colored more golden, so it does track with the whole yellow death thing that we talked about earlier. But the animation does make it look like it's made of gold, which I'll just say that gold's a terrible metal to make swords out of. It's soft and heavy. It's like the two things you do not want in a sword.
Right. Back with Scott and T-Bob, they decide to turn back where they came from, only to find that the cat ate all the pepperoni, so they don't know how to get out of the catacomb. And T-Bob says, "Too bad we didn't order Chinese." And I'm sorry, is that racist? I'm not sure I get what he's saying, but I'm pretty sure it's racist.
So I think there was a popular 80s rumor that Chinese food was made up of alley cats. I mean, this is a joke in the movie Scrooged.
Yeah.
It's supposed to take place at an earlier time. So I definitely feel like that implication is there. So like I was going to give a Buddy Hawks nom to T-Bob at this point in time because it's both obscure and weird. And, you know, as a kid, how would you go and ask your parents like to explain this to you at that point in time?
Absolutely. I mean, but if you think of it, it is one of the worst Buddy Hawks nominations we've had in this show. To lean into the joke that Chinese food is made of alley cats. That's horrific.
It's awful. And so that's why it was like, wait a second, like, how do you unpack this? And it never unpacks anything good.
No, it never does. Scott and T-Bob stumble upon Rax, who is polishing the sword. They try to run away, but Sly catches up to them and grabs T-Bob by the arm. T-Bob has a great idea. He ejects all the spaghetti out of his stomach onto Rax, which causes a bunch of hungry feral cats to attack Sly.
It's such a great motion because basically, like, T-Bob threw up the spaghetti onto Rax. Like, even though it's not digested or anything like that, it's just like warm spaghetti and sauce basically being like ejected onto someone. And if we're right about no cleaning, then some dried panda poo too.
Exactly. And Rax is constantly getting chased by like angry or feral animals.
Yeah.
That's one of the continuing running themes. And again, giving more credence to my theory that this episode was written by the same person who wrote Panda Poo, because Rax was also chased by animals in that one as well.
Again, we'll do the final countdown at the very end. But yes, I would not be surprised at all.
As they're escaping, Scott and T-Bob do grab the sword.
Scott's admiring it. Doesn't it look neat? I bet those are real jewels and gold. Which again, if it's even partially made of gold, like it'd be really hard to pick up. So Scott's juicing. We know this from many episodes now.
Miles catches up to Sly in the catacombs, and Sly reveals that he dropped the sword. And so there's a little awkward moment there. Matt, flying over in Thunderhawk, spots T-Bob on his scanner. And there's 3 Venom vehicles gaining on them. And he says they're headed toward the Coliseum. So that's going to set up this final battle in the Coliseum, which I think is a very cool idea. T-Bob is burning rubber to get away from Venom.
He looks pissed. Like he's got his mean eyes on at this point in time.
Yeah, he's got his Roy Batty eyes for sure. So now it's all inside the Coliseum. All the vehicles and Scott and T-Bob and the sword. Vanessa uses whip to get the sword away from Scott. Miles grabs it from her, stands atop Jackhammer, and he has literally his He-Man, I have the power moment, holding the sword up to the sky.
His line is, "The end has come, M.A.S.K. You are powerless to stop me now. I have the sword of Caesar." So before we go any further and recalling all the earlier moments, I want to take one more beat before we talk about what's to come. Miles Mayhem is an elderly man. He has a sword. He believes that sword makes him invincible. And I want you to know that everything's to follow should be considered under that framework right now. Okay?
All right. He points that sword at Thunderhawk, and Gloria uses some smoke bombs that she pilfered from Vanessa to make it look like Thunderhawk was destroyed. But in reality, they use that distraction to surround the Venom vehicle, and Matt reveals that the sword of Caesar never had any power. I'm like, dude, seriously?
Again, we just talked about this, but let's review. Gloria, Bruce, and Hondo just gaslit an old man to make him believe, even for a moment, that he destroyed Thunderhawk. And the look on Miles's face after this is so sad. It makes the entire situation not okay? You have just morally destroyed this man. Like, I don't know if there's ever any coming back for him.
I know. It's like, look, he may be the leader of a terrorist organization, but he's still a person. And this is the moment where Grandpa gets his car keys taken away.
It's so sad. It's so sad.
Incredibly sad.
Because he looks so forlorn, and we got to post this shot because, like,
Oh, yeah.
he's coming to the realization, I am not what I used to be. I really believed that this sword was going to give me magic powers to destroy vehicles, and it didn't.
It was like, it's not enough for Matt to defeat Venom here. He also has to destroy Miles, like, as a human being.
Success. He has succeeded.
He has indeed. Well, despite Venom being completely surrounded by M.A.S.K vehicles, somehow they let them get away. And this is just a complete dereliction of duty. There is no excuse for this. They could have arrested them all and Venom would be done. But somehow they just sit there and they watch Venom drive away.
I wonder if this is part of the cruelty of Matt, having just dressed down Miles so brutally. Like, he wants him to suffer. Like, he's not even going to give him a clean defeat. He just wants him to, like, stew in his own shit.
That syncs up with how Matt behaves. Now, Scott wants to know how Matt survived because he saw him blow up. And Matt explains that it was a diversion to take Venom's attention away from Scott. And Scott hugs Matt. He's like, oh, Dad. But he must be very confused by this.
I feel like this is Matt covering for the fact he just destroyed an old man, because Venom was not interested in Scott after getting the sword. Like, he very clearly says, M.A.S.K, I'm going to destroy you. I think there's some retconning Matt's doing here. Like, oh, yeah, I mean, I wanted to prevent Venom from going after you, Scott. That's why I destroyed that old man.
Now, Bruce grabs the sword and he says, Scott, how'd you like a souvenir? And hands it to Scott. So Scott takes the sword and then says he's found the best use for it, cutting pizza. So here's my question. Scott gets to keep a priceless artifact?
All I heard in my head was Indiana Jones screaming,
That belongs in a museum.
So I'll say this much. No one knew about the artifact's location previously. So Matt's like, no one's going to miss it.
Everyone thought it was a legend anyway. So now we've got ourselves a golden storage.
And I bought those ruins for my mall. So I own that sword now.
Well, everyone laughs and we cut to the more you know. Scott drops an orange into the garbage disposal and T-Bob reaches for it. And I mean, like, what the heck, guys? Like, you just did the garbage disposal one a few episodes ago. What is wrong with you?
I couldn't figure out if this was such a major problem in the 80s. We had to have 2 to 3 lessons on this. Because if so, the pileup that's happening in that sink is incredible. Like, it's absolutely incredible. Like,
well, he also says, like, you never know when someone's going to turn it on. As if it's like that Final Destination movie where, like,
right.
You never know, like, is it going to turn on? Is it not? I do have to say, though, after watching these things, I am a bit hesitant now when I know there's something in the garbage disposal that I have to pull out. I'm like, wait, is it going to turn on? So it's working.
Maybe garbage disposals in the 80s had a tendency to turn themselves on. Maybe this is like a dramatic flaw that we're unaware of today.
The proper way to do it is to go to the fuse box, turn off the circuit breaker for the kitchen, and then go pull things out of the garbage disposal. And then turn it back on. Kids, here's the fuse box. Well, and that's it. That's it. We learned the lesson again, and we are out. So let's grade the skills of our agents, shall we? So Gloria was chosen because of her background in archaeology.
I mean, I could not figure. I mean, maybe she recognized a route for the fountain, but it's never very explicit. So D-. Like, I'm being very generous with Gloria. I never like giving Gloria or Hondo low grades because I think so highly of them. But like, this is a D-. Like, I can't justify any higher.
Well, and I think that you gave her the D- in relation to Hondo. And what do you give him there?
That's an F. That is a fucking F right there. If I could give a lower grade, I would, because the entire thing's bullshit. And Hondo, I'm so disappointed.
And it's why you have to give Gloria a D-, because at least she doesn't make stuff up. And then finally, Bruce, who was pre-selected because he was there.
Yeah, so he doesn't run off. So I guess pass.
What was he even doing there? Hanging with Matt?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen him kind of vacation with Matt, Scott, and T-Bob before. So maybe they're doing kind of another round of that. Yeah. I don't know. Just happened to be there, so he doesn't run. So fine, you get a passing grade. I mean, literally, it's a pass-fail, so you pass.
Yeah. All right. Is this episode Panda Poo?
Yes.
Yes, we both agree with that. Yes, it is a terrible, terrible episode.
So much, man. The history is terrible. The stakes are poor.
Going back to the namesake of this award, the Panda Poo episode was about Miles carving his face into the stone idols on Easter Island. And the pandas were there as basically human shields, animal shields, to prevent people from stopping him doing that. Those are the stakes. For this one, the stakes are a sword with no power.
We've also talked about the fact that Venom needs to be a credible threat.
Right.
And, we've seen credible threats like earthquake machines, pulling down comets, giant caterpillars even. Here, I end up feeling sorry for Miles more than anything else. That is where I am left. Finally, I sort of alluded to this earlier. This is pound for pound, really like A players across the board for M.A.S.K. Really
the best
like
M.A.S.K.
awesome
agents there are.
Yeah, they're wasted in this episode.
Panda Poo all around. Okay, let's take a look at our awards. The Buddy Hawks Award. What do you think?
This ended up turning into an honorable mention, which was Sly Racks for Caesar. I did not think that would have been beat. But T-Bob with the Chinese food and cat connection, really, that trumped it. And again, this is an episode littered with possibilities here, but that really did it for me.
Yeah, the T-Bob Chinese food alley cats thing is unforgivable. Sometimes in some of these, we push the envelope a little bit and we think, oh yeah, but it was the 80s. Like you and I talked about this maybe afterwards. Yeah, it was the 80s. So maybe contextually, it wasn't seen as racist, even though we know it clearly was. This was, at the time, clearly a racist joke.
Yeah.
So this is unforgivable. So, yes to T-Bob, but 1,000 yes for the writer of the episode.
We're really racking up that Lifetime Achievement Award for the writers.
Oh, boy. Father of the Year Award.
I was kind of torn on this. I mean, it's kind of easy for the Matt leaving Scott in Rome.
Yeah.
It did occur to me that Matt lying to Scott about why he did that distraction could also rank up there because he clearly wanted to embarrass Miles.
I do think Matt dropping Scott and T-Bob off at the hotel. It's standard.
Off
Standard
screen.
there.
Off screen. They didn't even bother showing it this time.
Yeah. Sly Rack for Ragdoll Award.
I think it's got to go to Scott following his doom with T-Bob crushing him.
I do like Miles getting hit in the face with the tire, though. I mean, that one is that's hardcore, and he walks away without a scratch.
That was an honorable mention I had for that one, which is I really want to give it to Miles for breaking his neck that time.
Notably, not a physical scratch on him, but tons of emotional damage.
He's destroyed.
And what do you think? Any Roy Batty awards here?
I mean, if we assume that T-Bob is indeed referring to Talos, the mythical bronze robot, it's his desire to crush his enemies.
I agree. All I can think of with the Talos is Gigantor. Gigantor. Okay, well, that was episode 33. Coming up is episode 34, Peril in Paris. Buddy Hawks disguises himself as Venom agent Dagger in order to infiltrate Venom's secret base in Paris. There, he uncovers Venom's plan to find a Nazi doomsday machine. And just a note for those of you who are in Region 2, so over in Europe, this episode was titled Peril Under Paris. So there you go. More Nazis.
I was shocked when I saw this episode, and I feel like this one tops the last episode we saw with Nazis in terms of just wow.
I cannot wait. But I will have to, because for now, this podcast has to transform and head back to HQ. I am Adam Moore.
And I am PJ McNerney.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Mobile Armored Podcast Show is written, produced, and edited by Adam Moore and PJ McNerney.